Generally, what's going on with the inflation? We all see it now. Like you mentioned earlier, they're telling us it's transitory. Uh, Obviously, there's supply chain issues that we're seeing now. Do you think this will get worse before it gets better? And what's the way out of this that you see, if there is one?
Right. So let me just preface this by saying that I famously lost an inflation bet. I think it was back in 2010, right?
Mm.
So I was alarmed at the QE that was happening after the financial crisis. Some other economists one was a literal ANCAP and one was a very limited government minarchist. So these two colleagues of mine bet me because they just disagree with the timeline, and I lost. But so I just want to be clear that I thought conventional price inflation was going to hit sooner than it has, right? So I do want to admit that. But having said that, yes, they're printing money like crazy. We see prices rising. That's normally what you would expect. And so when you couple that, yes, with all of the shutdowns that happened, during the actual lockdown period, and now still paying workers in many cases more than they were making on the job in unemployment benefits, that's going to have ramifications. You can't just have large segments of population not going into work and, having ports shut down and whatnot. And things, in order for the stuff to end up on the shelves at Walmart, there's a lot of things that have to happen, leading up to that. And a lot of those processes have been interrupted. So this is what it looks like. It's almost the flip side where up till now, most people have just taken for granted all the things that have to happen in a market economy so that the shelves are stocked all the time. And you go in and you see all kinds of different varieties of stuff and the cashier's there and it's pretty affordable. Like that's what we just think of as normal, but it's not automatic. There's a lot of stuff that has to happen. And we've seen now what's going on when those processes get interrupted. So like I say, the Fed, it's done a lot of stuff. It's not just a quantity of money it's created. For example, it got rid of reserve requirements in March of 2020, meaning that now banks legally don't need to hold money in reserve to back up their loans. So that's a major change. There's lots of the types of assets that the Fed can buy just kept expanding as these crises kept hitting. So it used to be that the Fed basically could buy U.S. treasuries, and that was kind of what it did. Now anything's on it. They could even buy individual, groups of U.S. stocks if they wanted to, which would have been considered crazy. What an abuse of power or potential abuse of power, to have the U.S. Federal Reserve, based in New York City, be able to just buy individual corporate stocks. But now that's on the table because everyone's looking to the Fed to bail everybody out. So my long way of answering and saying that, yes, we're seeing the results of price inflation already. And that's their go-to move at this point, is ultimately people are looking at the Fed to be the lender of last resort. And so I think this is just going to get worse before it gets better. The only thing, in other words, that would get them to stop doing this is if there's a big crash in the dollar, just like the thing, once they went off gold fully in 1971, we had the worst inflationary decade of peacetime U.S. history. And, it took that experience to kind of scare them straight for a bit, with Volcker coming in and slamming the brakes. So I think you're going to see a similar thing here where they're going to let the economy, quote, run hot for a while before they would then slam the brake. Because right now, if they tighten, there's going to be a big financial crash. So they have an incentive to not tighten as long as it doesn't seem too bad. And so right now, it's mostly just people complaining about, wow, stuff's getting really expensive. So I think they're going to let that, anger of the masses intensify somewhat first before they slam the brakes and ruin everybody on Wall Street.